This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Hello, Rob Barrett. How you doing? My engineer on the other side of the glass, keeping me company, making us all sound like rock stars. We got a great show for you tonight, and through one of these first-time authors, I promise you will hear something you can relate to, whether it's a young college girl who wants kids her age to become interested in politics, or a woman who turned the tragedy of losing her husband into a story of love, survival, and hope. Or a guy who was inspired to write a safety book for kids when a friend's daughter came to him with a situation that he turned into a teaching moment. Let's begin with marriage. That's a good one, right? And a couple that believes in sharing their experiences, they can help others have a happy marriage. With some help from his wife, Carol, Jerry Wilkins wrote The Great Marriage Physician. Would that be you, Jerry?
No, ma'am, not at all. No, The Great Marriage Physician refers to the marriage doctor, and it is a second version of that book written for the Christian audience. We actually added to The Marriage Doctor, which Page also published, we added things from the Bible that help us have a better marriage.
Like what?
Like kindness, tolerance, having sexual intimacy and how good that is scripturally. We've been married 49 years, be 50 this December, and we've had a typical marriage with its ups and downs, but we made it through the tough spots, and we learned a lot, and we decided that we would write some newspaper columns, which we did, and then we wrote for a couple of local magazines. And when we retired a few years back, we decided, let's just write a book and leave that behind. It has about 65 different areas where we felt like we had learned something about how to deal with our differences and how to have fair fights and how to resolve conflict. And we put all that in about 65 short chapters.
You get a lot of questions from people, right?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
What's the most common?
How do we get along dealing with the differences between me and my spouse? And we've got 2 or 3 chapters in there about how do you deal with your mate's odd and quirky needs and habits. And it's full of a lot of humor because we've had to laugh our way through a lot of our differences. She didn't know when she married me that I rubbed my feet together when I'm watching TV. She told me she didn't know she was marrying a cricket. But we've learned to deal with things like that. And we put a lot of those kinds of things in the book and how we learn to celebrate our differences and gave some suggestions about tolerance and compromise and how to receive criticism and also how to give criticism. I don't believe there's very many subjects we haven't touched on in this book.
Would you say communication is a big part of a happy marriage?
It's the largest section in the book.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the first section, there are 6 different sections. One is how to have, good communications in your marriage. And then we go from that to conflict resolution. And then we go to sexual intimacy and talk about the ups and downs of that. And then we deal with a very touchy area like flirting and dangers of having an affair and working through those. And then we get around to money, how to deal with money. And then we talk about how to grow your love over the years.
And it's all based on your experience. It's not like you're a doctor or a psychologist or she's a doctor or a psychologist. It's just based on the fact that you've had 50 years together, so you think you've figured it out.
Well, we're still working on it, but my wife, she was a biblical counselor, offered free counseling for 15 years to thousands of couples here locally. And I've been a minister for 49 years. And during all of those years, I counseled couples, and before I married them and after I married them. And so we base it not only upon our own experience, but what we've learned from the counseling that we've done over these many, many years. And what we saw were the major problems and how we help people work through those as a good counselor would.
So do you have a built-in audience for your book?
Well, to be real honest, we wrote The Marriage Physician for all Christians out there. We know that more than half of the population in America is Christian, and So we added scripture for each chapter. For instance, a scripture that dealt with how to put up with your the differences in your marriage. We gave some scriptures that are about tolerance and forgiveness. But we also know that there's about half of the population that doesn't read Christian books. So we've got the Marriage Doctor. It's the same book. We just took out the Christian content because we want people who don't go to church and who are not Christians to also get the help for their marriage that's we think can be found in this book.
Up next, LaRhonda Courtney wrote a story about how she overcame years of sexual abuse. It's called Sacred Memories. LaRhonda, what happened?
I was molested when I was 6 years old, and I was molested by my cousin. I can kind of remember just a little bit. I was visiting my aunt in a nearby city, like 10 miles away, and I just went to go to the restroom, and I remember this tall boy when I was coming from the restroom, he asked me to go in his room, and he made me perform oral sex on him, and he just did it repeatedly and repeatedly. And then all I can remember is this dark room, like a cave. It was dark curtains and stuff in there, and I was traumatized from that for years. It continued to start in my home. Even my older brother molested me too. It never stopped, and then he got murdered at 19. The abuse stopped. So in both of these incidents, they told me, I'll kill you. So that's a lot what the book is about my journey.
How did you overcome this?
I overcome it through my faith in God. That's why I call the book Sacred Memories of My First Love. It's because he was my sacred memories of my first love. I can talk to him about anything, and he helped me to overcome it through my faith and going through therapy and just praying to him every day for this journey.
Are you able to help others?
Oh, yes, I'm well able to help others right now. It's because I'm healthy in my emotions now. I can talk about the incident. I can talk about the person who did it, and it's not no bitterness. It's not no resentment or, want something bad to happen to them. I can help others in so many positive ways now.
What made you finally decide to write it down?
Well, it took years. It takes years because you really can't write a book when you're so full of pain and so full of anger. So when my sister passed in 2013, it gave me the courage. I was already writing on it because I'm a doctoral student. So I was already writing on it, but it gave me the courage to really put this out now. And then I looked at my great niece. She was a baby. I was rocking her. And then I had a little 5-year-old, it was like a 4.5-year-old niece, which is 6 now. I'm like, I got to break this cycle. I can't let it continue going up in the generation. So that was one reason it was written. It's because of them, and I didn't want no one to molest them. Because if you don't break that cycle, it's just going to continue going up generations. And so that's why I did it now.
So was it difficult for you to sit down and go through all this again?
I've been writing a journey since I was a little girl, so I kept this journey for years. That's how I was able to suppress my pain. I'm a writer. My mom was a writer, so I would just write things down that happened in my journey throughout all these years. That's what I did.
So how are you getting this to the people who need it the most?
Well, right now, I do have a book signing at a Barnes & Noble at our local store here in Phoenix, on the outskirts of Phoenix. So gave the book a lot to people I thought really needed the most. I mean, I was in a doctor's office, and this nurse was talking to me, and we were just talking. I just told her I wrote a book, and she asked me what it's for, and she broke down in tears and said, I was molested by my own father, and now my granddaughter's being molested. So it's people that I just run across people that are been very abused. I mean, they have been victimized, they've been sexual abuse, they have been raped, and so I'm giving it to those people I feel that it can impact them the most.
All right, LaRhonda, another example of how therapeutic writing can be. We're going to switch over now to Skype so that we can go to Panama and talk to Maria Morales. She wrote Sunset. It's a story of love, hope, and survival. Hey, Maria, I'm curious. What do you do in Panama?
I'm a real estate broker, and now I'm a writer.
That's right, Maria. Get used to saying it. You're a writer. What inspired Sunset? What's it about?
Well, Sunset was inspired by love, actually. It's my story. It's a story of an American colonel and a 100% Panamanian lady. We were both divorced. We remarried, and is the tragic ending. But it's also a story of raising kids from two different cultures and from two different marriages. My husband died, but he had a terrible accident and he disappeared for several days in the ocean, and we didn't know what was happening. He was the highest ranking officer here in Panama at the time he died. He went fishing with his friends, and he went to sleep that night, and next morning he didn't wake up in his bed, and we had to search for him. Finally, we found him. He'd had a massive heart attack, and probably he went out. I'm guessing, I don't know. He went outside for air. He might not have been feeling well or something. He had a massive heart attack, and because it was a fishing boat, and the fishing boats are usually low, he went overboard. And we had 21 wonderful years. I think the little things made us happy. Like, for example, we were happy with whatever we had. If we could do something, wow. But if we couldn't do it, we would be happy. And we were very happy with the simplest things, like going into the lake at the canal, go fishing. We used to have an island. It describes the island very well in the book. For those that know Panama or military people that have been here, the Gatun Lake, and it's a lot of his military history. My husband was a Vietnam veteran. He was Purple Heart, and he went to the Gulf War. He made it to being in the highest echelons of what I call the biggest enterprise in the world, the U.S. Army. He made it to be a colonel. And then we decided to settle down here and raise the kids.
So I guess you enjoyed sunsets together as well.
We enjoyed a lot of sunsets together, and he was enjoying that sunset a lot with his friends. Guys, when they go fishing, they fish, they drink, they have fun. So that was his last sunset, and that was the last picture I received of him. In a way, I compare it to my life. That was kind of like, it was shocking, it was a tragedy, but it was also like a sunset. The sun was going away from me. I have made it, but I still miss him. At the beginning and the first chapter, when it says that I am 2 months after Gary died, there's a lot you have to do when your partner dies, okay? Legally and also emotionally. And so we had a house in the mountains, and I knew I had to sell it. And I went over to check on the house and pick up Gary's stuff. And when I was coming down the mountains, it started to rain real hard, a very tropical Panamanian rain, real hard. Gary used to drive all the time, so I kind of panicked a little bit. And I got angry and I said, "Why aren't you here?" I pulled to the side of the road and I just started crying. It was a very emotional thing. When I came home, I tried to put it in writing, and that's the first chapter, and that's how this story starts. Because when something like this happens that changes your life, you go through many processes of mourning. Sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's loneliness, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's acceptance. And so it's a process that you have to go through. And I know there are many others in the world that have gone through widowhood. You always find a strength, but it's a difficult task to go through.
What's your greatest hope for this book?
My greatest hope would be that others read it, and that no matter what happens in your life, you have to stand on your 2 feet and go on forward. If you're still here, It's because you still have missions. No matter how hard things seem to be, there's hope. There's always hope on the other side.
We're going to take a quick break. Coming up, a children's survival book and a book of political intrigue. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything. Copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Amber Turbo was already writing her first book when she finished high school. She calls it a reflection of our political times through a plot involving political intrigue. Tell us more, Amber.
Well, it's a story about two kind of like lovers, a girl in California who has a very dark past, and she meets this guy, Bo, who kind of, excites her and makes her feel something again, and it takes them on a journey. This relationship kind of takes them in a place that really, the main character, Leah, she doesn't really expect, but it helps her grow as they get entangled in this kind of political plot that eventually leads them overseas into, or this really dark, like, war conspiracy that is almost consuming to them and their relationship. Believe it or not, the idea actually came to me in a dream. I'm very much, I take political science classes, and I'm very worldly in that aspect, and just kind of developing the plot that, like I said, just kind of came to me. Like, I just thought of it, and I started free writing about it, and it just kind of developed from there, like different plot twists, and it all just kind of branched out from this one simple little spark of an idea.
A spark of an idea that came to you in a dream.
Yes.
Are you in college?
Yes, I am. I go to the University of Pittsburgh at Bradford. I'm a junior, and my major is English, and I have a double minor in political science and criminal justice. So
do you write a lot?
I do. I write a lot of research papers, a lot of literary critiques. I actually have a part-time job with the Bradford Era. It's a local newspaper, so I do a lot of writing in my classes and in my free time, and I'm still working. Pawns is a first in a series, so I'm still writing on the second one.
Wow. How did you manage to write this with all this other stuff going on?
Well, I had, in high school you really don't have as much going on, so that's when it kind of started, when the idea sparked, and that's when I was able to, build the plot and develop it. But I think that all the things I have going on have really helped build my experience. Like I said, I study political science, so that aspect has really helped, me grow and to build this idea that, came in that time. I'm very good at managing time. So it's just a matter of, going outside and thinking about, writing and just kind of just building on and continuing it. It's all just like a building process and expanding on what I originally started with.
How are you getting the word out about your book?
Well, I've done several book signings, just small ones at high schools. I've donated my book to several libraries, had it brought into their section, and I've done a book signing at my campus here. I've submitted to local newspapers, and I have a Facebook page called Pawn Spin of Fate with Amber and Turba as the URL address, and just trying to get the word out there by spreading it to as many people as I know as possible.
Good for you.
Thank you.
What would be your advice to aspiring writers?
If you have an idea, if you really want to write, then you can't force it. Writing while it's a field and it's an area like a job, it is also this expression of creativity. So you can't force it. And whenever the moment of creativity hits you, just go with it. It can be anywhere from, a leaf falling to a stressful day or a changing life situation. It can be anything. And, just follow what you feel and your passion and just write. So that's my advice. Just write and just keep writing. For me, it's just about, just raising this awareness. Everyone needs to be aware of the situation going on, and I think that the plot and with the characters is very relatable, and it can bring in a young audience into the world of political science and get them really questioning and really thinking about what's going on. And I think that, just spreading that it's really huge, and it means so much to me.
Great, Amber. Excellent advice from such a young writer. Agnieszka Roski was inspired by all the Barbara Cartland romance novels she read in high school, and now she's written one of her own. It's called Not the One for Her.
It's about this girl from 19th century. She's, I want to say, ahead of her time, because back in the 19th century, always was a man was deciding about everything. The lady had to follow the man. So I try to write about somebody who is kind of almost seems like from 20th century views, that she can decide about herself, choose her husband. And basically her father gave her, hand to choose her own destiny. They had a very good relationship as a father and daughter. And, I actually wrote it back in 2010. And I did try to, send it to other places, and it just, they didn't like it, or they said thank you, but no thank you. And, Page Publishing was the one who actually picked it up, and I'm so grateful. They saw something in me.
Feels good, huh?
Oh, very, very much so, because, I came from Poland, and in Poland, we have writers, but Polish publishing companies, they don't really want to take a risk with the new people. They prefer already established writers. And I love it that, at least United States gave me the chance, especially Page Publishing. This is like the best feeling ever, because I've been writing since I was 11 years old. So I never thought that I'm going to be published ever. I honestly thought that this is going to be just for my kids someday, so maybe they will do something with it. But I could not believe. I believe it was Mr. Sussman who called me with the news. You should see me. I was jumping up and down.
That's great. Well, you know what? You never know what could happen from here.
Yes, that's true. And I always, when I'm talking about, publishing with somebody who's thinking about it, I said, what? Please go to either, not Facebook, but the web page of Page Publishing, or just give them a call. Because this is like the biggest thing right now, because everybody's looking for somebody who can actually see something in them. And that's what was given to me. Page Publishing saw something in me.
All right, Agnieszka. Good luck. When a little girl of a friend came to Richard Marquez and told him about a situation she was uncomfortable with, it inspired him to write a book called One Golden Rule. He calls it a children's safety book. Hey, Richard, what did this little girl tell you?
Well, Ashley came to me one day and she said, Uncle Richard, these boys keep stopping by my mom's house and they know my brother's not here. So I taught them a rhyme. If it feels bad in your heart, then it's time to part. I didn't know how to approach the book. I wanted the children to know the truth, and I started thinking, well, we live in a good world and we live in a bad world. And then my inner voice, if you will, told me, well, tell them that. So that's what I wrote. We live in a world that's both good and bad. The good things are happy, the bad things are sad. And when I did this, I went to the local school district and had the children do the drawings. And it turns out that there's more drawings, more messages in their drawings than there is in my writing. They drew stuff in there that if I would have drawn cigarettes or guns or alcohol as an adult, I don't know how well it would have been received from the court of public opinion. And, I had one lady, she told me, she said, why did you draw a gun in there? Why do you have a bottle of rum in the bad world upside down? And I said, ma'am, I didn't draw that. That came from an 11-year-old little girl. So, like I said, there's more messages in the drawings than there is in my whole book. So it worked out real well. I spoke to a guy named Michael Bryant. He was a professional in the educational community. And the first words out of his mouth were, "What a concept." He said, this opens up dialogue for the bad things of this world. He said the little boy or the little girl is now going to look at the reader and say, well, now I know what the good things are, but what are the bad things? The other thing that happened with me is I received a phone call from a early elementary teacher in New York, and she said that she's very frequently asked by parents if there's any books that open up dialogue on children's inner voice. You know, I have nowhere to direct them. She said, but I do now. She said, yeah, I'm going to be using your book in all my classes and all my curriculum, which is great, you know, and, you know, if we don't tell them the truth, like I said, it's, you know, it's like sending them out on an ice pond and telling them it's okay. You know, it's wintertime. Let me tell you the writing real quick so that you understand completely. It's real short. It says, Billy has some things he wants children to know, to keep them safe and to help them grow. We live in a world that's both good and bad. The good things are happy, the bad things are sad. Children have the right to say yes or no, and if a stranger seems bad, then it's time to go. And if the stranger tries to stop you, yell stranger as loud as you can. It may save your life and mess up their plan. Strangers will tell lies or offer a candy bar to trick a child into their car. So when you play with your friends or even after school, Billy wants children to remember one golden rule. If it feels bad in your heart, then it's time to part. I want to try and save as many lives as possible, and then some. I believe that countless tragedies and bad situations can be avoided, you know, by using your inner voice.
Very good, Richard. And when your inner voice tells you to start writing, you really should listen. That wraps up another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Come back next week. Same time, same place. 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything. Copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.